We moved to England from Norway. That was a fairly difficult move. The sort of elder son was always expected to go into the family visit. I mean, I sat in board meetings at 10, angry with school, angry with my mother, angry with everyone, socially conscious, felt weird. If I drank, that just went away and that was great. Yeah, I couldn't control it. So at 20, I was in a sort of heap of trouble, heap of debt, surrounded by some pretty dangerous people and way over my head.
Relapse rates are so high.
Yeah.
What can policymakers do to support sobriety and mental health?
Behavioural health coaching, I love for several reasons. If you're a 15-year-old and you're taking drugs and you're ADHD, hooking you up with a 22-year-old who goes to the skate park with you, I bet he'll do a better job than I will in terms of connecting.
What happened exactly to get into treatment?
I did lots of stuff I'm not proud of. I'd stepped over a boundary I wasn't ever wanting to step over.
Welcome to the Living a Life and Balance podcast. My name is Abdullah Boulad, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Balance Rehab Clinic. My guest today is Johan Sorensen, founder of Portobello Health, new owner of the historic Cardinal Clinic, and one of the most forward-thinking figures in addiction recovery today. In this episode, Johan shares his personal journey from growing up in a privileged family marked by addiction to battling his own struggles with substance use as a teenager in the UK. He opens up about the moment that made him get clean and how the pain became the foundation for his career in the recovery field. We explore the complex causes of addiction, the cracks in the industry, and Johan's vision for the future of mental health care, including the potential role of AI. I hope you will enjoy. Johan, what motivated you to do what you do today?
Probably a combination of personal experience, lived experience of getting into recovery. And my trajectory was to be in shipping, which is the Norwegian part of my family. Getting sober at 20, realizing that shipping in Norway and being in recovery was going to be difficult. And then the other side of my family are in addiction treatment. So maybe a lack of imagination, following sort of family footsteps. And sitting in a rehab thinking this is amazing, I love this, but I could possibly do it better. So those are probably the reasons for it.
What is the history, or what was the history till you had to go to rehab yourself?
I started drinking young, started smoking and then drinking young. My father was alcoholic. So, ready availability. I remember the first time I, had a drink. So not everyone does, but I remember that feeling great. And so by the age of, we moved to England from Norway. That was a fairly difficult move. And so by the age of 14, regularly drinking and taking drugs. 16, I'd say I was dependent in some form. My mother and aunt are both in the field. So my aunt is an interventionist. She was the first interventionist in Europe.
Wow.
So my mother's a sort of fierce addictions therapist. And I'd been to family programs when I was about 14 in a place called Farm Place, where I learned a lot about addiction and it being sort of a family disease. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm here to talk about the effects of my father's drinking, but I'd be hungover and thinking, this isn't going to end well.
You were at these gatherings because of your father's process?
Yeah, so my father was still drinking.
Yes.
But my aunt worked at Farm Place and my mother went in for codependency.
I see.
So I went along to the family program. On a Sunday we would sit there and I identified as much with the patients who were in there talking about their drinking or using as I did with the other family members. So I think from that age, I thought, this could not end well. And I went to Alateen, which is a support group for children of alcoholics and drug addicts. And,
Yes.
so I always sort of had an awareness, and I knew pretty much this was going to be problematic. And I think I also knew that I would probably need to stop at some point, which was helpful. But that knowledge alone isn't enough to then regulate the behavior.
Yes.
So I kept at it. And I'm lucky. I was only 20 years old, and I had a family who knew what to do. They knew how to intervene. They knew how to sort of handle the situation to leverage me into treatment.
Yes.
Well, actually, I went just to a 12-step meeting. I went to treatment later.
You spent quite some time between 14 and 20 to get the first support or help in your case.
Yeah, I mean, it was offered. But I knew if you accepted the help, you'd need to stop. Yes. So I wasn't ready to stop. It was, it was a sort of anesthetic and social lubricant and confidence booster and all of those sort of things. My life got quite dangerous and quite exciting all in one. I wasn't very good at knowing where that line existed. So at 20, I was in a sort of heap of trouble, heap of debt. I was surrounded by some pretty dangerous people and way over my head, and essentially living rough. And I thought, this is not, whilst at university. And I thought,
yes,
I'd made these sort of weird justifications that it's fine because I can go into uni, I can have a shower at the gym, and my friend's got some clothes. so it's weird how you end up thinking, well, this is okay. And then one day you wake up and you think, actually, this is not okay. So yeah, it was brief and unspectacular, but it was enough.
You mentioned your father was also into alcohol addiction. Can you tell us a little bit about him? How did he get into it, and had this effect on you as well?
So he was in many ways brilliant. I mean, he was very clever, very very funny. Also sort of quite sensitive. Looking back, he was quite sensitive. But found himself, I think, in a job he didn't want in the family business, which was sipping. I don't think he ever wanted to do that. We were living in Oslo, which is quite a conformist sort of society, and he was not particularly conformist. So I think there was a number of things which made him unhappy. He drunk from a young age in a sort of bon vivant, sort of life and soul of the party way. The effect, so he was a brilliant man, but, pretty terrible husband. And, as a father, he was just mainly absent. I mean, it was mainly that he was either preoccupied working or out. So, not catastrophic, but not very present. Okay. And my mother was very distressed. He was unfaithful and, didn't carry the load within the family. So I saw the effect on my mother more than him having a direct effect on me. I'm also very similar to him. So I think there was a sort of recognition that if, this is certainly how I could turn out if things went in a different path. So, that was him.
Yes. It sounds to me like he grew up very privileged and he could take over the family business, but found himself in something he was not feeling comfortable in.
No. And I think it's reasonably common thing. His father didn't drink because his father drank too much, and it sort of
there is some
trickles down and
family history.
Yeah, and certainly we were always expected. The sort of elder son was always expected to go into the family visit. I mean, I sat in board meetings at 10. Yeah. It was sort of very clear that's what was going to happen. All I remember was there was a white noise machine. I mean, I can't remember the board meeting, but I was watching this white noise machine thinking, this is amazing. Okay. So that's probably too early to be inducted into any sort of board meetings.
Was this also expected from you to be involved in that business?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I have my great uncle's name. I've still got the name plaque, which was taken off his door, which was going to go on my door, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was, well, and I don't even know if anyone said it, but it was very clear that was expected.
Were you free to decide whether you go that path or not?
Well, so we ended up moving. My parents got divorced.
Okay.
I moved to England. He stayed in Norway. And the rift in that divorce was massive. So I guess my grandfather expected me to carry on. And then my father's life unraveled. The business started unraveling. So so I think no one was particularly interested in what I was going to do with my life at that point. There were other priorities.
How old were you when your parents got divorced?
14.
14. So this was the time when you started drinking.
Yeah. So at 14, moved from Norway to England, which is quite a big change.
Yes.
And I looked older than my age, so I could get to pubs, I could buy alcohol. And I was pretty angry. I was sort of angry about everything. So yeah, definitely the drinking sort of took off at that point.
Okay.
Quickly found other stuff. So
we know like emotional regulation, or what the inner state is at that moment. At the age of 14, certainly you had difficulties maybe to judge what how to control that.
yeah, I couldn't control it.
Yeah.
And I drank to blackout. I mean, I figured out you drink a lot quickly, you black out, and that was great. So there wasn't much sense of trying to control it.
What relief did it give you?
I don't know. You know, I think I was anxious. Didn't really know. I sounded a bit like the Swedish chef off the Muppet Show. I was pretty self-conscious. I didn't want to conform. I hated wearing a school uniform. They had sort of rules in the education system we didn't have in Norway, where I'd been taught sort of critical thinking, you know, question everything, don't take anything for granted, that sort of thing. And that didn't work well in the English system, which was all about rote learning and, you know. So I was, you know, angry with school, angry with my mother, angry with everyone, socially conscious, felt weird. And actually, you know, if I drank, that just went away and that was great. So I don't think it was deeper than that, just a medicator.
Yeah. What happened exactly to get into treatment?
So I did lots of stuff I'm not proud of during my drinking. I got involved in not great stuff. But the thing that tipped me over was I had this amazing girlfriend who I'd been dating for 3 years or something. She was amazing, really nice. And one night I was unfaithful. So I mean, and by that I kissed someone else.
Okay.
And that was like my last moral tipping point. That was because my father had been unfaithful. I'd seen the effect on my mother, and that was it. I thought, this is sort of the last thing. The one thing I never intentionally hurt people I was close to. I was sort of fiercely loyal.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is the person I care about most in the world. And then I end up doing this. So that was it. You know, again, unspectacular. Just a sort of realization that I'd stepped over a boundary I wasn't ever wanting to step over.
You saw yourself being your father?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what I wish I could say I was that enlightened that I saw it quite as consciously as that, but I don't. I think I just thought, yeah, I'm turning into something I recognize as not great and someone I don't want to be. I didn't handle it well. I just then never contacted this person again and disappeared off the face of the planet and got clean. So it was, you know, not the most functional way of getting clean. But yeah, it's funny how it can just be a random thing that tips you over the edge.
What did you do then? So was it your own motivation then to change?
Yeah.
And who helped you to do that change?
So I sort of wasn't particularly welcome at home. So at that point, I was also in trouble in London. So I moved back in with my mother in Surrey. So she helped me by that happening. And I went to an AA meeting, and I did that because I remember from being in that rehab as a family member that's what you did. If you had a problem, you went to AA.
Yes.
So I sort of looked up. There was an AA meeting. I went along, and I was the youngest by maybe 30 years. I mean, it was just, I think it was a Tuesday lunchtime. And lots of sort of blue rinse older ladies who drank gin. And I mean, I had hair. It was weird. I had, lots of piercings, and I was sort of compulsively going to the gym. So I was sort of big and odd looking, and they were just really nice. And that was the thing. So I was used to pushing everyone away and looking and acting in a slightly frightening way. And they were like, "Oh, would you like a cup of tea?" And, tell us about it. And it was just that sort of instance of kindness to a stranger, which at that point felt so unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And that was it. I thought, I feel accepted, wanted in the room, and people interested. And they thought it was fascinating. Like, tell me about cocaine, because they were used to gin. So I just felt cared about. So mum cared about me, all of that.
Yes.
But if you're a family member, you just think of it as bad and conflictual. It was just these random strangers who were just nice and had no money, so they'd buy me a cup of tea and a tea cake. I'd never had a tea cake. It was brilliant.
Kind of the strangers had no agenda for you.
No, nothing.
So you would have accept them more than a family member to help.
Yeah. They were just so nice. They'd come and pick me up. It was great. I mean, it was so different from how I'd experienced life in the couple of years prior to that, or how I, interacted with society.
Were you then also at some point in a residential program?
Yes. So I remained clean and in recovery, moved back to London, but I was quite mad. So I was sort of working. I worked as a bouncer, and I was studying, and I didn't know how to manage relationships very well. And after about 2 years, I felt like I was going to relapse. I was so stressed, and looking back, probably anxious. I wouldn't have known it was anxiety, but I was stressed. I was anxious. Not really knowing how to manage life particularly well. And I thought, I'm gonna relapse. So I went to a place called Western Counselling Services. Western Counselling Services is, it was a small yellow room, and it was yellow because of the amount of smoke in the room.
Okay.
And it was a Baba kebab shop. And everyone was pretty much a Greek or Portuguese heroin addict. Hard guys. They were tough guys. It's me and this Belgian guy. And I said, I need to come in. I'm clean. They were really confused. And I went, you don't come in to rehab clean us.
Yeah.
I was like, no, but if I don't come in, I'll relapse. It's cheaper to do it this way. So I went in. I think I was the first person to go. So I went in under codependency because they weren't quite sure.
Yeah.
They didn't really know what that was, but we made it up as we went along. And it was great because it's just a bunch of people talking and, confronting and talking. And so it didn't really matter if I'd used or not. That wasn't the point. I mean, they were a bit confused. I was like, relationships are hard. And a lot of them were like, no, we're getting clean to, find girls.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah, no, they're dangerous. Like, don't go anywhere. So it was great. I was supposed to go in for 6 weeks. I stayed for 9 months.
Wow.
In there, I figured out that I don't need to, fill my tax returns. I don't need to really do life. I can just sit and talk about myself in group. It was brilliant. Loved it. But again, I was thinking, could probably do something a bit better.
Who was paying for that?
Well, it was mainly the state. So I had benefits. had housing benefits, I had some social security stuff, and I think my mother made up the balance. But I imagine it was not particularly expensive.
And after 9 months, you were healed. What happened there next?
Well, so the 9 months fulfilled a sort of academic year. So then I had to leave and go back to university. So I finished off that degree. My brother had also gone into this particular centre. So 2 weeks after I got clean, I decided to 12-step my brother, tell him he had a problem needed. He was not able to just do it through going to the room. So he'd been to this rehab. So I knew it worked for him. So that's why I went there. Then I went back to university. And while in the rehab, decided, I want to train.
Do you think there is like a genetic aspect for predisposition for addiction or being more likely to fall into it?
Yes, I think we know enough to know there is a predisposition. I don't think we know enough to have nailed that down firmly. And I think it's a lot more complicated. And in and of itself, I don't believe it's enough. You can have a genetic predisposition. In the same way, the way I process any number of things is different than anyone else I'm around. So I suspect the way I react is genetically factored in. And if you look at certain populations, you see higher incidence. There's probably a genetic factor. You need other things. But I think... for example, my children are aware of my history. My wife's in recovery.
Yes.
We've had the chat. Look, your reaction to substances, could be problematic and something you need to be aware of. So, I think it's a factor.
How do you adjust now, having your own family, your own children, with your history and your father's history and the other extended family history? How present are you and how conscious are you around that topic when it comes growing up your children?
Oh, all of my many children have known for sort of my history, in an age-appropriate way from a young age. Not least have they never seen me drink, but they also know I work in this field. So we've had this sort of chat that there's a long history. You're probably at more risk than some other people. It doesn't predetermine, but, keeping an open dialogue with them about drug and alcohol use. And I know that if any of my children encounter a problem, that they do come and talk to us about it.
Yes.
So, quite good at having that chat. I mean, and for me, there's also a history of mental health issues. So actually for me, I tend to tell them to stay away from cannabis more than just about anything else.
Yes.
It's sort of controversial amongst their friends, but rather they took cocaine than cannabis. So far, none of them have encountered any major issues. And when things have been problematic, they've felt able to come and speak about it.
I mean, addiction doesn't come alone, right? So it's not about just getting sober and then life can continue or be flourishing in it. It comes definitely with a variety of mental health issues.
Gone are the days pretty much where someone had just one thing going on, I think.
Yeah. What is your understanding today of addiction and addiction recovery in general?
So my understanding of addiction would be that, I guess when I first came into the field, I'd subscribed to a disease model, a traditional 12-step view of it. Today, I'm certain we don't know. So today, I'm certain that there are many competing theories. And the truth lies somewhere, I believe, in the middle of all of those theories. So whether you're looking at a disease model or you're looking at, well, maybe not the moral construct model, I'd probably reject that one. But if you're looking at attachment theory or, that it's as a result of trauma or Johan Hari's sort of connection theory, I'd say it can be any number of that on an individual basis. And the danger in saying, I know what it is someone will prove you wrong. So I think the longer I'm around, the more I can accept how little I know. So I think there can be, but not necessarily a genetic factor.
Yeah.
Trauma can definitely play, part of it, but our understanding of trauma is now so diffuse, it's really hard to know whether, unless things are perfect, you've got trauma, right? So you could say trauma underlies all of it.
Yeah.
But some people just drink themselves or use themselves into addiction. You have something happen, you're laid off work. I've seen people with no history, of problematic use, laid off work, get divorced, start drinking, drink till it's a problem. They're addicted. They stop drinking and they're fine. So there's enough disproving my previous theories for me to be certain about it. But I think the skill is working with someone to figure out what led them to this particular place on an individualized basis. That's how you can help treatment plan out of that.
Right. Yeah, there is certainly not one size fits all in that concept. When you were in treatment program, you went through the 12-step. Can you explain what this is and how do you see it today?
So it's funny. The treatment program I went to shouldn't have worked. If you look at, if you look at current theory, it was really tough. It was confrontational 12-step model. So a lot of it was about breaking down the ego in a pretty brutal way. Very little of it was about increasing self-worth or shame reduction. If anything, you'd say, you probably got a large amount of shame through it. So it was a very traditional 12-step confrontational model. But some of the people delivering it were clearly incredibly caring, compassionate individuals. So more than the methodology they were using, it was the people who were delivering it. One of them was called Aline, who's he's still around, this Welsh counsellor. And he was amazing. And he would be confrontational. But you felt nothing but love and care coming out of this person. So again, I don't think it was the modality that made the difference. They did certain things which were clever around helping people be honest and taking responsibility, stuff which the old school did quite well. But it wasn't the methodology. It was, a group of people. So it helped having a community of people who you sort of bonded with over your commonalities. And then just a few really wise and caring professionals within that system.
Yeah, it makes absolutely sense. It's the experience at the end and not really a systematic model which should work with everyone.
I know, but it's very annoying. It's very hard to do outcome studies on that. Yes. So that's the frustrating bit, is you look at the data and the theory and it doesn't necessarily match the actual practice or outcomes. So it shouldn't work. If you took modern theory, that shouldn't have worked. I happen to know that, and that was 28 years ago, a lot of the people I was in treatment with are still clean. So it shouldn't work, but actually a lot of people are still clean. So something happened outside of the sort of theoretical framework that worked. So again, it just leads to think, until we understand the problem and have a sort of more unified way of viewing it, then understanding the outcomes is particularly difficult. So
relapse rates are so high in coming out of a rehab because whatever the underlying cause has not been resolved or the environment. What's your opinion on that? How do you see relapse rates in rehabs around the world? I know you have insights more than anyone else.
I don't think the recovery rates are really any better than they ever have been. So if you look at if you took the sort of recidivism rate in a sociological framework, that we don't seem to have made much of an impact on that. And I don't think that's necessarily down to the treatment centres or the individuals or society, because we're not measuring it properly. And again, unless we define what the problem is. So if you are abstinent after a year, but you're suicidal, is that a positive outcome? I mean, I'd say not.
No.
If you're, you've been clean for a year, but you're violent to your family, is that a positive outcome? Would it be better actually? So until we can measure it properly, I don't think abstinence is necessarily in and of itself. It's one of many goals.
Yes.
But until we sort of measure it properly, it's hard to define it. I think we are much closer to being able to meld philosophical sort of framework. So I went to something early in the year where they had harm reduction and abstinence on a panel, and there was almost no disagreement. There was recognition that this is all part of a continuum.
Yeah.
That to me is good news, because people go through, whether it's mental health or addiction, there's often not a linear process. And at times we've excluded people in need because they don't fit in with what we think they should be doing. So if you can bring them together, I think the death rates go down, which is important, because someone who's dead is not going to be a successful outcome, no matter how you measure it.
Never.
So I think sort of tying things to outcomes more will help us, but average amount of treatment episodes is 4, I think, before you hit a successful one, and that's remained fairly static. So I don't know if we're doing any better. I mean, there's not more provision. Government beds have gone down, private provision's gone up. So I'd like to think we're smarter and we're doing it better, but the data isn't necessarily suggesting that yet.
Or what is, in your opinion, working well and what is not working well from a practical perspective?
I mean, I think some things have worked for a long time, and whether you're looking at 12-step engagement or, and that's very sort of Western-centric, or even sort of white Judeo-centric. If you look at black populations in America, more of them will get clean through the church than they will by going to 12-step meetings. Other parts of the world, organized religion could possibly get just as good outcomes as other ones. So what's working is, I think we are able to find community more easily now than we were before. If you want to find like-minded people, you have the internet. And I think that works well until it stops you from actually connecting with community. So it's a sort of mixed bag.
Yeah.
I think there's real promise in some of the stuff AI will deliver. I think we're less judgmental generally around addiction and mental health, more welcoming to people. And that's resulted in people seeking help earlier, which is sort of pretty crucial. So I think we're doing that well. We're talking more. What are we not doing well? So, 25 years ago, the addiction treatment industry would have a representative body in the UK, which could, advocate for treatment providers. But actually, it was European-wide. Yes. So we had a European-wide body which could try to regulate standards, so everyone had the right standards, ethically directed treatment. You could, go to the EU or the British government and advocate for it. That's gone. The Federation of Drug and Alcohol Professionals pretty much gone. So there's probably less people engaged outside of a narrow commercial focus than there used to be. And I think that's not great. Our understanding of trauma and attachment and underlying causes and co-occurring is better. And that means hopefully we've got that. But it's a real mixed bag. It's sort of some pretty sharp commercialism coming up against better understanding of what we're dealing with. So, we'll wait and see which one sort of wins out. There's much more of a separation of private sector versus public sector. Before, those interacted better than they do now. If we can get that to work better, that would be helpful.
A lot of topics, AI and the political side, but maybe let's dive into the political discussion. What can policymakers do to prevent or to support sobriety and mental health in society?
Much easier in a dictatorship. So most of the data would suggest that if you make an investment into, particularly if you look at the sort of prison system, if you make an investment, a heavy investment, and there are great programs within prison, you'd see a tremendous outcome after 7 years. Your return on investment would be tremendous in terms of increased productivity, engagement in the workforce, less recidivism. But of course, our government terms are about 4 years.
Yeah.
So whenever you sit with a policymaker and say, look, please spend billions on prisoners, and the next government will see the returns, that never goes well. Whereas if you go, and I'm not saying it because I'm a fan of dictatorships, I'm not. But if you go to a country where they have a very long-term view, you can put forward policy decisions which will probably have a better impact long-term. Or if you go somewhere which is very coalition-based, you can get longer strategies. At the moment, everything is, more now than ever, everything is incredibly short-term. And it's just about how you get through this current election cycle. And having public health policy dictated over a 4-year term, I think is really problematic, because public health is a chronic long-term problem. So what can they do? I think they can regulate more. I don't think, I'm sorry to say it, I don't think we're regulated enough.
Okay.
I think, we have the CQC, which doesn't tick all my boxes for what I think it should do. Does in one way, but it doesn't particularly around the delivery of services. It certainly doesn't around financial modeling. So I think we could do with more regulation, and unless we can prove that we can self-regulate, that should probably happen externally. And that provides more scrutiny, more emphasis on outcomes. And that's got to be better ultimately for a client. So that's one thing. And it's not for a lack of willing politicians. I've met countless politicians who'd love to be engaged and
but the pressure also to decide, and the limited time frame.
Yeah, look, it's not a popular constituency. The drug addicted has never been a sexy topic for anyone to run on office for.
Yes.
I think there's more understanding now than before, but if you're looking at, prisoners, homelessness, the mentally ill, or the addicted, saying we'll be compassionate and put funding towards that is a hard sell.
So funding a big topic, but funding which lasts longer than a specific period, a long-term plan for it.
Yeah, and I think you can also be smart. Look, the NHS has so many problems. I think there are lots of interventions you could put in place which would cost less than is currently delivered in the public system. But it requires creativity, openness. There's plenty of vested interest in people keeping bureaucracy within those entrenched systems. So your ability to change the way social work, outreach, engagement, I can train up, I could go into a prison. So, say if you wanted to be a coach, a behavioral coach, you need no qualifications for that. What you need is life experiences, and having gone through that. There's an abundance of that in the prison services. You could go in there, you could say to people, look, take those experiences. For good, you'll get paid a salary. You can go into your communities and engage in a positive way. Brilliant. Good for the prison service, good for recidivism, but it would take a large capital injection. It would take political will. Similarly, within the NHS, the case management we offer privately is cheaper than the cost of delivering it within social services and the NHS.
Yeah.
But the systems are built such that sort of untangling that ball is hard. And the cost of, the cost of the public system currently contracts into private systems for addiction care and other care, which are backed by private equity groups.
Yeah.
There's a massive conflict within private healthcare generally, and I accept that. But when the public system is so bereft of its own provision that it has to contract with private equity, there's an obvious tension. And it's not to say the provision's bad, but you and I both know that if you're a shareholder, that conflicts with wanting to get people well on a fundamental level.
Right.
So, all of those structural issues are difficult. If you go to other countries where that's not the case, you can actually see organically grown systems which function really well.
Which countries do function well?
I mean, whether I'd say Lebanon is an example of it functioning well is another question, as you can imagine. But for example, or I've seen it in the West Bank, I saw it in Iran, where you have a lack of historical structures. So they approach a problem and say, okay, the problem is drugs.
Yeah.
And the creation of systems just from people's imagination without ideological battles. So in Lebanon, they had this incredible harm reduction service, and I was running an abstinence service. Yeah. And I was used to being in the UK and we'd fight ideologically about it. I went to the lady who ran the harm reduction service and said, look, if people aren't ready for this, can they come there? And if people, are sick of using, harm reduction. And she had no preconception. She was like, yeah, great, totally makes sense. And it was the first time in my career I'd heard it. And you can create a system from that. Similarly, in the West Bank, they ended up, one of the services ended up doing sort of assertive outreach, a dating service, which was, it's a small community. So, so that, everyone here knows who's taking drugs. Yeah. And if they want to be in a relationship, we have to essentially sell it to the community and say they're fine. So it's a sort of dating service, business ownership model. And these are created just from people wanting to do good without all the structures in place that need dismantling. So I think there's brilliance out there. It's as much dismantling.
You have had a history of leading rehabs and building in different countries. Can you tell us more about what have you done? How did you get into this industry, and what were the steps you have been doing till today?
I trained as a counsellor at Promise, which is in Kent.
Yeah.
I think very quickly I thought I quite enjoyed marketing. And I think maybe that's to do with sort of how I was brought up. I thought I was interested in the business side and the marketing side alongside the clinical. I mean, I loved working with clients, but I was frustrated when marketing wasn't done properly. So really quickly moved into dual sort of clinical and business side of it. Then I worked at Farm Place, which was nice. That was where my aunt had been part of setting it up in the 70s. So that was great. And then people started going to Arizona for trauma and sex addiction. And I thought, well, we should do that here. I mean, you shouldn't have to fly. I get very annoyed when people have to fly somewhere else in the world to do something because there should be provision. So with a guy called Don Surratt, we set up LifeWorks, which is now owned by the Priory. So we did that. And then I had the opportunity to go to the Middle East. Someone I knew wanted to set up centers, actually wanted to set up centers all in the MENA region. And at that time, people were talking about the sort of Middle East market. And it drove me nuts because none of them had ever been to the Middle East. None of them spoke Arabic. Like, was like, how do you know whether this is sort of culturally okay? And like, how do you know that this treatment modality will fit into this population? So I agreed to go. So I moved between Beirut and Jeddah to set up services in Beirut and Jeddah. Then there was a little war with Israel, so I got involved with doing sort of trauma work in southern Lebanon. And I was also on the board of something called the Coalition for Outcome-Based Benefits. It's a very sexy title. We then rebranded to C4. So I've always believed in needing to be involved in more than just commercial practice. That sort of keeps you, I mean, I'm an atheist, but it sort of keeps you spiritually pure, which, I mean, that's sort of an oxymoron, but whatever. So I'd been involved with these charities looking at all of that. So we got involved with not just setting up the rehabs there, but got involved with dealing with trauma and systems of care within, that was particularly the sort of Levantine region. So West Bank, bit in Gaza, bit in Lebanon, and then Saudi, and seeing how, you know, in my ignorance, seeing how fundamentally different it would be trying to create a system in Lebanon from Saudi. You know, I didn't know. I was just ignorant European. So that was fascinating. And through this board, we were doing stuff with Native American reservations in the US, some stuff with Maori populations. So it's sort of, that helped me understand that no one has the answer, because it's so specific, not just to the individual, but to the culture you're dealing with the history you're dealing with the structures in place. So I went on to do that. Then did some stuff in Qatar, which again, very different from the others. Back to England, tried to take on the referral agents. That wasn't fun. And then met my now wife, who's American. So I ended up in New York, and there wasn't really a center in New York, which was weird. There wasn't a sort of private primary rehab. So got involved with setting up a rehab there, moved to Nashville. Nashville is where all the biggest behavioral health care companies are centered in the US. And it's just fun. Nashville's great. So spent some time there, then came back here, did Portobello, and then bought a psychiatric hospital. That was not part of the plan. That was spontaneous.
Yeah, that's beyond any other clinician or anyone with recovery background would do in the industry. So I think you have had a lot of impact on others and how to do things here.
I mean, it's super fascinating. I don't know whether I'd had impact, but it's, you know, if you, well, you will know, if you sit there and you've got a gem and you've got some answers, and then you look to somewhere else. I mean, the beauty is to try to spread that, and how can I maximize the impact, right?
Let us talk a little bit about integrity in the industry. And particularly, you mentioned something you took on.
I wish I took them down.
You took on the referral agents.
Yes.
What was the problem there, and what happened?
So sometime in the early 2000s, some people clocked on that they could essentially sell patients into treatment. So this is the concept that you go to a treatment center and you say, right, I'll send you a patient, private pay patient for 20,000, but you have to give me 10%. Very quickly, I mean, so on an ethic, you know, the ethics I can talk about, but very quickly I realized that this was a terrible idea for the treatment industry, because essentially it was a race to the bottom. So try to get people together to say, let's not do this. If no one engages in this practice, then it goes away, right? It's a marketplace, and if everyone refuses to participate, don't think it started by people with ill intention. It was just an idea someone had that caught on, that, oh, I can make some money by selling in patients. In the US, that's human trafficking law violation and a federal crime.
Right.
But we got no legislation in Europe around it. So I failed. The industry didn't take it on. Some of the centres said, yes, we're not going to engage. Other centres did. And the problem from the treatment centre side was there was a marketing industry within treatment at that time. But of course, if you're relying on your patient flow just through paying cash for your patients, you don't need to market.
Yeah.
You also don't need to improve outcomes, nor do you need to innovate. All you need to do is generate enough money to pay for your patients. And that happened. So the marketing side got decimated. You can go to the US and there's business development in behavioral healthcare conferences. There's sort of thousands of people involved in marketing. And here there's sort of 4,
Yeah. Yeah.
which for an industry worth the amount we are is a nonsense. And it's purely because it went down this route. Also, treatment centers, inevitably what happened is people would say, okay, I'll pay you 10%. And then slowly it would move to 15%, 20%, 30%.
Yeah.
And the margins of people who weren't well backed put them out of business. Yes. So good operators went out of business. So yeah, I was cross about it. On the other side, it was felt ethically completely wrong. I mean, there's no way I could with certainty say that I would pick, if you had 2 centres, one would pay me £5,000, one would pay me nothing. It would be impossible for me to tell you that I had an unbiased view of where someone should go.
Yes.
And in addition, no one was being open or honest about it. It wasn't, the therapist in the office or the referral agent weren't telling people looking for help that they were being paid. I mean, it was all, all under the table.
Is it still happening today?
Yeah. Yeah, there are still referral. Yeah. So the and me and some others have tried hard to find out how we can get in and change it. And there's plenty of value in offering people advice about where to get help. So important. Yeah. But you should charge the person looking for the advice. Right. So it's the same as other sort of
being transparent about it.
Be transparent.
The one who's paying for it knows about it, then it's transparency.
Yeah. But charge the family.
Place. Yes. Exactly.
If the family's looking for advice, like any other service, pay for the advice. Of course, they're not going to pay £5,000.
Yeah.
So you go to the institution because they're going to pay £5,000. So that's, obviously be transparent. I would say, my discussions with people engaged in this is there's not enough money in charging patients or families for it. Finally, the Advertising Standards Agency has become interested, and they are now, cracking down on it, which is great. Okay. And
I know it's not done because we had also a case recently. Someone contacted a psychiatrist clinic from the Middle East, contacted us and wanted to refer a client. They said, yeah, but do you collaborate with local doctors that they work also during the treatment program? He said, yeah, they can join. We can update them about the progress of the patient. Of course, we do this with anyone from around the world. And then how much do you pay them? So usually, no, we don't pay anything. Then I ask, is it then considered as a referral fee? No, we don't take any referral fees. It's just a consulting fee.
It's a consulting fee.
I said, I'm sorry, we don't pay consulting fees or to external doctors who are not part of our team. And is it then depending on the decision if the client would come to us? Or no, the client would decide by himself. The client did not end up coming to our place. So, but it needs certainly integrity and also from everyone involved to be on the right path long term. But there is one other thing which I feel in the advertisement
Mm.
industry,
Yeah.
when we look at the discrepancy between North America and Europe, European centers, legit, licensed, are not allowed to do marketing or online advertisement, whereas North American centers, they have access to everything. They can advertise in Europe even, and the European centers cannot advertise anywhere. So because they need this type of legit script, which is
Legit
only
scripts.
US based, and I found this also a bit unfair to the local European centers.
Yeah, I think, it's incredibly problematic. We bought it on ourselves. So, this practice, along with the sort of insurance fraud which took place and shadowing sites on Google in the US, meant that we joined online gambling as the two industries which weren't allowed to advertise on Google, which is not illustrious company. And there's been changes through bringing in legit script. The fact we don't have it here massively disadvantages that. Now, I think around SEO, and it's not my area of expertise, but with the introduction of AI, I actually think what will end up happening is physical centers will end up dominating it, which will, I think, level the playing field around that much more. Because at the moment, you can't really see where anything is, even if there is a center. So I think the sort of I think the weight it's going to put on physical location centers through ChatGPT and some of the others will change that. Trying to get into legit script being broken, sort of bought over here, or speaking to Google has been difficult. And the answer coming back is, well, you're still not clean enough an industry for me to legitimize it over here, because legislatively, if you get it wrong in the States, you go to prison. Here, there's no consequences. So I agree it's unfair. I agree we as an industry could do more to change it, to make it fairer. But we have no representative body. We don't meet. How do we?
Yeah,
How do we
it's
get?
not unified.
It's not
every
unified.
country, every law is different.
Yeah, and some of the bigger players who've generally been involved in sort of patient brokering and stuff are cleaning up their act. So there's really hopeful moves towards that happening. It's great, and hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah, good. Hopefully, today you have been running the last years Portobello. Tell us more about that. What work do you do? What type of clients do you serve?
So Portobello, again, was set up mainly because I was cross. It seems to be a theme. So behavioral health coaching, I love for several reasons. It's a great way of getting into the industry. Currently, if you want to train to be a therapist, I mean, you're likely to need to be fairly wealthy to afford the time and money to train. So you're looking at sort of middle-aged, mid-career white people seems to be, by far the most. Nothing wrong with that, but it's hardly a way of getting representative professionals into the field. So coaching is a great way of entering, either as you train as a therapist, or again, you don't need dumb barriers of qualification levels into it. We can train coaches really easily, cheaply. But it's a short training. You're doing it as an unqualified person. And what I was seeing from the States was, over here, you were getting coaches who are charging, £200 an hour. Now, that's more than twice what a nurse with 7 years training's got. And that what ends up happening is we delegitimize the whole area of activity by it being rapacious. You're shooting yourself in the foot. So Portobello was set up mainly because I was cross about that. I thought if I come back to England and I set up behavioral health coaching and dominate it, if you dominate it, you can start setting standards and pricing. So that's the reason for doing the coaching. And I love it. I mean, it's a really, if you're a 15-year-old and you're taking drugs and you're ADHD, seeing whether sitting in a room with a middle-aged guy like me in a therapy session for 50 minutes versus me hooking you up with a 22-year-old who goes to the skate park with you. I bet he'll do a better job than I will in terms of connecting and possibly affecting change. So I love doing that. Case management, again, again, it's happened in the States for a long time. I've always worked between here and the States. And there is value, like I said, in families having advice about what to do. So case management is one form of that. People call us and we'll figure out treatment plans. Our job is to know what all the services are, who all the professionals are, and match people in with the right thing. And we charge the family for that. There's no... if you offered me a ticket to Mallorca, I wouldn't take it. So our research is off our back and we get paid by people looking for help. So Portobello does therapy. We're great therapists. We do case management. We do coaching.
And you serve clients locally, global?
Global? It's global. And so treatment, the inpatient treatment bit, the bit that you specialize in or others specialize in, we know how to do that. It's great. The front end and the back end, we do not do great. So Portobello is about doing those bits. It's staying clean in treatment's easy. You're in treatment. So it's ensuring that the biopsychosocial post-treatment bit works. And you've got to niche it out. If you have, a 23-year-old posh cocaine addict in treatment, and you say, well, just go back to London, go to meetings. Now, if she goes to the wrong meeting, she may never go again. So the trick is knowing exactly which meeting or who to hook. It's like manipulate the situation to the advantage. So that's my sort of passion part about that.
To connect the right person and to create the right motivation in them. Right?
Yeah. So hopefully you get better outcomes if you're able to provide a longer continuum of care. 1 year of engagement really changes the relapse rates. And it's not that you need to be in treatment for a year, but points of contacts for a year make a difference. So that's we're global. I mean, most of them are English, but
if I understand it correctly, I mean, we as the Balance, we offer the residential program where you step in is in the pre-phase. Let's call it. It can be an intervention phase. It can be supporting the whole family, not just that person, to be then also in treatment and beyond that, let's say the aftercare support for mid-longer term.
Yes.
To create a successful outcome.
Yes, but crucially, it needs to. So the engagement needs to happen between the provider
and the families.
Well, no. So it's the planning of the continuing care needs to happen early treatment. Because what generally happens often is the family or the system around them. Once the person's in treatment, they're like, great, problem fixed. So actually explaining to people, you need to think about this in terms of in a long-term care. So the best successes are when we're working with treatment providers from early doors. As soon as someone's in treatment, you're starting to build a biopsychosocial picture about what people need on the outside, get people used to that idea. But it's great.
Yeah. No, sounds as a crucial, important service for families to have a long-term successful outcome. You mentioned this young, posh client. So you work with many high net worth individual clients or have been in the past also. How do you see the differences there? Or are there different needs, different techniques, different way of communication? What's the difference to normal treatment you would offer to someone else?
So I'm tempted to say less than you think. So we're not a particularly. I mean, we're cheap in the marketplace, so we're not a particularly, and everyone charges the same. So you're not charged more if you're a sheikh than if you're a teacher next door. Around that, a true understanding of the lifestyle and pressures and needs of the person coming in is important. It's also important to understand that if you have a doctor come in, so it's not unique to someone who's a high net worth individual. You need to understand the pressures on a lawyer. You need to understand the pressures on whoever you have coming through the door. I think the thing that the area, and I guess, there's some personal experience, and many of our friends is often actually the second generation of wealth, or the third, or whatever. It's creating meaning and purpose for people who don't need to work. There's people who are self-made, and that's a very specific thing to tap into, whether you're treating entrepreneurs or successful business people. The generation beneath that, where there is not necessarily any motivation, creating meaning and purpose. I don't care so much what the environment is. I care a lot about people being able to tap into the meaning and purpose. Without meaning and purpose, it's really hard to see why anyone would be successful. So for me, that's the crucial. And I have clients who want to go to the most expensive or the most, and I think that's great. You can go wherever you want to go. I think, the balance has actually got great clinical integrity and an understanding of the clients, which is, I'm not going to be unfair and say it's unusual, but it's a bit unusual. So it needs to be nice if someone, but I've had billionaires go to somewhere which isn't nice. It doesn't need to be nice.
Yeah.
But you have a choice. If you have, if you have $1 billion, you have a choice of where you go. So,
right.
The crucial bit, I think, is the meaning and purpose bit. It is, again, individualized. Some people I know want to go somewhere so they feel exactly the same as everyone else. So individualizing it makes a difference. But the meaning and purpose and the systems around it, trying to untangle family offices, or if it's entertainment, being able to work with the agent is as important as working with wherever the talent is, being able to renegotiate contracts in order to incorporate self-care once you're back on set. All of those things are things I'm like, you do well, but if you're going for that, those are the bits that matter.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the
you know
purpose,
more about it than me.
the motivation, the purpose and the motivation, that's what most people then may lack. And then also the social surrounding. But for high net worths and let's say people, entrepreneurs and certain positions, there is also the discussion between individualized treatment versus group-based treatment and so on. So it doesn't, as we discussed before, it doesn't mean one size fits all. And an individualized program or one client program, there is the individualization, which can be much more tailored also to some of the cases. You have been involved now lately in taking over.
First.
Yeah.
You're one of the first people I came across, though, when you were talking about individualized treatment, about incorporating the group element.
Yeah.
But the fact that was fairly revolutionary is amazing, but it shows the understanding of that. Again, the bit I like is if you have a duchess coming in and you need a coach, for example, that coach needs to understand what that looks like.
Right.
There used to be a time where any old person be chucked into a role without any understanding. So if you're going back to Saudi, that person that's going with them needs to understand that you don't go up and give mum a hug. All of those things. Individualized means within a cultural and personalized context. Anyway, there you go.
No, it's much more complex than just we're talking about it right now. It's the cultural understanding, it's the presence, the co-regulation, it's certainly the understanding of the disorder. It's not just the addiction, it's also the mental health side. All this, needs proper training.
And your ability not to be bought.
Yes.
So that particular segment are used to paying. Yeah. So one of the things I enjoy about charging a rack rate, which is low, means someone's life does not stand or fall
Yeah.
on what this incredibly wealthy person's paying them. They can
Yes.
go work with an accountant for just as much, which is why I want to fix the pricing as much as possible for coaching. Because suddenly, if like whether I keep this client pays my mortgage or not, you're compromised at that point. At that point, you're going to try whatever you can to keep them dependent on you.
It's very important because this is what creates also trust if you have transparency when it comes to cost.
Yeah.
A lot of clients we have, they have this have this feeling of people want to take advantage of them.
100%.
And we had just recently a situation with a client. We referred another specialist, which is out of our team. And then just because it was like a celebrity, apparently much more cost was calculated.
Yeah.
And I was feeling bad because, I mean, how could you? This is exactly what we are as an organization trying to protect. And so we needed to step in and sort that out and correct. We did this so the client felt taken seriously and protected from our side.
Increasing the trust in your organization as well in the process.
Which is important because I always say it's a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Yep.
What we try to do is not, okay, let's get the most out of this client now. But no, this client will have a successful experience. He will be a referral to others. He will speak to other potential clients, to us. We stay in contact. It's a beautiful thing I can get is if a former client send me a message just randomly and say how grateful he is because he has now a wonderful life. And that's the purpose.
Yeah. Oh, it's where ethical care meets good business. And the two go together if you're in it for the long term, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like you got that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Hopefully. We try.
Yeah.
Can we discuss your latest venture?
Sure. So it's a psychiatric hospital. Now, and the reason for that is, so in the UK, we got psychiatric hospitals with amazing clinicians. We're going to get in trouble again here. Amazing clinicians. They're all backed by private equity. And you end up with a sales cycle generally. So 5-year sales cycle, and the care can become more focused on increasing your margin and squeezing your costs. And I know that because I've sat in the system, I've seen it, and I keep doing it. Alongside that, as someone who refers in, there's a lot of people with dual diagnosis or just general mental health problems. Trying to get someone in can be difficult. So, inquiry lines shut down, or a nurse on a ward doesn't want to take someone in on a Friday. My experience, there's more mental health crisis on a Friday night or a Saturday morning than there is during the week. And so we'd be left holding someone who desperately needed, or you end up with an inappropriate referral where you're leveraging a psychiatric patient into rehab, which would take them on a Saturday, but simply because they couldn't fit in there. So Cardinal Clinic, I knew the family who've owned it for 48 years. They got into financial distress, and we had, maybe 4 days to decide whether to buy it, which we did. So I partnered with Robin, who's the first guy I worked with at Promise way back in the day. And so we have it, and it's super exciting. I mean, I'm not sure if I know what I'm doing. Don't know whether it was clever. I was sitting there the other day. It was quite stressful. I'm not going to sell it. I'm not being salaried from it. So I was like, oh, wait, why am I like, why am I? I think being able to provide, well, you'll understand this, the psychiatric profile, and we have comorbidity with addiction, but we don't do an addiction program. I think addiction programs are best done in an addiction center, but we'll take comorbidity along with psychiatry. It's such an individual thing. And if your interest is in individualized care, there are sort of general rules with addiction which don't apply with your average mental health patient. So that's great because we can, employ somatic therapies, or we can do whatever, because we don't particularly care about the cost of the delivery of service.
Yeah.
So the ability to take someone in 7 days a week, 365, and then really use Portobello's case management planning, so real treatment planning, is great. Love it. It's a bit stressful, but really enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it will be helpful for a lot of people, because the purely psychiatric focused clinics, from our experience, because we try to refer clients who cannot afford our program or who ask us for some specialized centers, and we have difficulties to refer if it's more psychiatric oriented, because the rehabs, even they on the website, okay, we provide services in that field, depression, anxiety, trauma, and so it's not what maybe they are focused at.
No.
So rehab for addiction and but psychiatric focused, that's what we're lacking actually. So
yeah, and it's quite expensive to deliver because you need lots of psychiatrists, and psychiatrists are quite expensive, and you need lots of nursing and nursing.
exactly.
But you need it. You can't, you can take dual diagnosis into an addiction program, but it needs to be fairly heavily stacked addiction wide, because the need for psychiatry, clinical psychology, and nursing is considerably more.
But the training of the staff is different as well. I mean,
Yes.
the nurses, every single person needs to have a different kind of level of education. It's different.
It is.
I believe it's not comparable.
It's different, but also the thing that's been interesting is, our background is therapy, and we really believe in the delivery of various therapeutic models into this population, but the tolerance levels completely change in the population. So if someone's coming in for autistic burnout, their tolerance to group therapy is going to be vastly different than an 80-year-old with early onset dementia and depression. So being able to create a community group therapy environment is like super niche and interesting. And that's where I guess you can show your skill or experience. So yeah, enjoying it. It's good.
When is the opening?
Oh no, we open in July.
You open now in July.
Yep.
And great. So congratulations, and hopefully
come and see it. I mean, if you
happy to
as a visitor rather than a patient.
Yes, I feel well. I'm balanced.
And then the other thing that's been hard here is once you don't need to be in acute care, there's no secondary.
Yes.
In the UK.
Yes.
So you're either stuck at a very high cost in acute because there's nowhere to go, or you're sent back home prematurely. So you end up with a massive recidivism rate or relapse rate. So we've implemented sort of, secondary housing within the ground, so people can, again, the continuum of care, you can stabilize in acute, you can then go into transitional living, but 5 minutes walk from nursing.
Oh, that's nice.
So measuring the outcomes through that will be great. We'll look forward to that.
Yeah, looking forward to see that.
Yeah.
But will we not be out of business soon with AI?
I mean, who knows? It is amazing. So one of the things we did was I did sort of anonymized cases, quite a large number. And our case managers are great. They're really well trained, really experienced, very creative in coming up with treatment planning. So I took some of these cases, ran them through an AI program to get treatment recommendations, therapeutic interventions, the clinical basis for each of these things. And it was amazing. And obviously I had my clinical team do the same thing. They didn't come out with anything nearly as good as the AI modeling, which it won't. The data set is enormous. So the trick is obviously our families don't want that delivered in a spreadsheet from ChatGPT. They want it delivered by someone who knows how to actually humanize that and put it into place. But the ability to get it right increases exponentially with AI, which I find really exciting. I think there's a resistance in our field to it, which is a mistake. Like, might go wrong. In 3 years, we may all be dead because it's gone wrong. Fair enough. But I'm not going to change, I'm not going to be able to impact that. I think, I've been to conferences where people said, well, there isn't the co-regulation that you get. And I think that's nonsense. I think you've seen dysregulation or re-regulation through interaction with computers for decades now.
Yeah.
So I don't buy any of that. Once you combine holographics with AI and large language models, and you measured someone's regulatory system, it's going to dysregulate, co-regulate, all of that.
Yeah.
So I think it will be transformative. And I think we're much better off seeing where our part in that is than trying to fight this sort of wave coming down. How about you? What do you think?
I'm with you. I'm with you. The critics you mentioned is purely based on what AI is today. It's a 2D version of what it can be. Once it's a version which is like a robot or in our world can interact with us, that's different.
Yeah.
If someone can show compassion and interact with me, it will help a lot of people in the future, fairly quicker than the waiting lists we have right now in many countries.
Yeah, can you imagine the delivery of AI to Burkina Faso? Or what like the cost of delivery is going to be like there are so many permutations where this can improve mental health. The biggest barrier is going to be us as a mental health industry for it to be implemented.
Yeah.
So I think it's exciting, and we need to see where we fit in it.
We are agile. We work around it. But I certainly already see it in my children. I mean, they're like between 11 and 16 right now, and they already refer to ChatGPT or similar tools for any life questions and or any conflict at school. They ask. I mean, they mention it then to us. We talk about it. There's an open conversation about it, and I'm fascinated how quick this has become a reality in our children's life.
There are opportunities for us as well within this. I was just talking to my clinical director, and we've had our first person seeking help because they've become dependent. So this person, it's a sort of variance of OCD. They check every decision with ChatGPT and have become completely reliant on it. So there you go. It's another stream of business.
No, but we will see it where it goes. I mean, as with everything, as with social media, is social media a healthy thing to get to and get information from? No, I mean, then I
I'm
trust
much more concerned about that one than I am AI.
Agree. Johan, what do you personally do to stay in balance in your stressful life?
Yeah, so I sort of knew this answer was coming. But almost nothing. And I could sit here and lie about that and say, I eat great and I sleep lots, and it's just not true. So, and why is that? One, I have 5 children. PBH looks after hundreds of clients, sometimes at a very high risk. I've got a new business. It's a startup. You know what a startup's like.
Yes.
I do various, other charitable stuff. My wife has this incredible, she works on amazing things that requires me to, carry her bags or make sure the kids get fed. So, and I love working. So I'm terrible at looking after myself. I do very little to keep balance. I probably should, but I'm not good at it. I have a massage once a week.
That's good.
Organized by my wife. I'm not sure I'd have organized, but which I love. I mean, I'm very grateful for. That's sort of one of the highlights. And I try whenever I can to watch my kids play football when they're playing a match. Or I have another child who acts, and if she's in a play. But this is, that's about it. There is, there's not much balance.
Yeah, to some sort. Your children keep you young, and your wife cares about you. Do you have a support system in that way?
Yeah, look, I've got great friends around me, and I've, great friends, great colleagues in the field. I work like mad and sleep very little. And I do lots of stuff I'd never recommend to clients. And once the startup phase is finished, it'll be easier.
Different.
But
then I now officially invite you to Mallorca, to one of our facilities, and get some rest.
I would love that. Love nothing more.
Is there something you would like to share with anyone out there as something helpful in their lives?
Something helpful in their lives?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
What they can do, what they can implement.
I mean, I think that is about, find people to connect with. I mean, I know that's sort of glib, but the most helpful thing at times, and I can get stressed, anxious, and depressed. The thing I need is lifeline human beings. So find authentic human beings who, when you're in trouble, and it really doesn't need to be a professional, it can be whoever, make sure you've got some numbers you can call when you feel incredibly low or distressed. Like,
how can they connect? What can they do?
Like, put your phone away, go sit by a fire and talk to someone about how you're feeling, or ask them how their life is. Or, if you want to be present, find a young child, put your phone away, get down on their level and just interact with the child on their terms. It will drive you nuts for about 10 minutes. And then suddenly you're connected and present. So, it's the bravery involved in vulnerability, which I struggle with. I'm like a Norwegian. We are not famously vulnerable, but how I feel best is if I sit down with someone and I take the time and I really tell them what's going on in life. And often that is actually a social contact rather than, a therapist for me. I'm a terrible therapy recipient. I have to do experiential therapy to really get to where I need to go. But I can also do it by sitting down with someone I care about or who I know cares about me and telling them honestly, this is going on in my life. That feels great. Having a cry, which I'm horribly bad at doing. I can sometimes watch like a Disney movie and that will get me crying. But like, find a way of releasing some of those feelings,
emotions.
Connect with something. See, this is not my strong point, but those would be my
That was already very
emergency
very
points of advice. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the work you have been doing in the industry, for all the people who have been getting the right treatment, showing integrity, and I have a lot of respect to you. I enjoyed very much our conversation today. I know you are very busy. Taking the time here is very valuable to us. Thank you very much, Johan.
Thank you very much. It's been great. Really loved it. Thanks.